to Penniac Wilderness. Today I'm just doing some chores. I wanted to collect some topsoil, get some firewood, and then get some logs that had come down that I was given and get them to the sawmill. But the point of my video is I'm going to do all of this using the Woodlandmills Multilander trailer. And this is a trailer I bought from Woodlandmills probably just shy of a year ago. I've used it for a whole bunch of different projects, and it's really come in as a very useful utility trailer, and that's basically what it is. It's an off-road utility trailer that can kind of do a little bit of everything around the homestead or woodlot, and I'm going to walk it through some of those tasks today. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is just hook up the Multilander trailer. The trailer is a pretty simple hookup assembly. So there's a hand crank on a jack stand. The hand crank itself has a storage slot in the trailer for when you're not using it. And then the hitch on the trailer is pretty nice for off-road use because it's a pivoting hitch. So that helps keep the trailer level when you're going over uneven roads. And the trailer comes with a pin to lock your tongue. There's no safety chains on the trailer, which is something I might consider putting on, but this has stayed quite solid and the pin helps it stay in place. The tongue is for a 2-inch hitch, or 2-inch ball. So then I just crank up the jack stand. There's a pretty rugged pin that you can take out, which allows you to turn the jack stand. Put that pin back in, and then your jack stands up and out of the way. So our next job today is we're going to load these 3 logs onto the Multilander. And basically the Multilander allows you to drop the sides, connect 2 ramps, take the pulley, or winch, that you use for the dump box, flip that to the opposite side of where your logs are located, and use that crank to pull the logs, or to kind of roll the logs actually, onto the trailer itself. So tailgate removal is pretty straightforward. There's a clamp on the bottom of the tailgate on both sides, and then the tailgate just slots into 2 posts on the back of the trailer. So that's the rear tailgate. Front tailgate's exactly the same. Lift up the tailgate. So the next thing you need to do for the side loading logs is this boom for the dump box and this crank have to be moved. The boom ends up being a ramp on the side of the trailer, and this crank or winch ends up being the way you winch the logs on, but you need to move it to the side of the trailer. Take the rope out of this pulley, remove the pulley, and then you can store the pulley on the arm for the winch. And then just remove the pin that's holding the winch arm onto the frame. Pull that pin out. And then unhook another pin that is the support beam for the winch arm. And then you can pull the entire winch assembly out of the front of the trailer. And then you can take this whole assembly and it slots in the center of the trailer on the opposite side of where my logs are. Slide it into that slot. And then there's a pin to secure it in place. And then with the tailgates removed, the sides of the trailer will just lift up and angle towards the logs. And the trailer has 2 built-in ramps. So one of them is stored underneath the driver's side of the trailer. And the other is the boom pole for the dump box, which I'll remove now as well. The ramps themselves are pretty straightforward. They just slot into the sides of the trailer. The ramp that mounts underneath the trailer, that one's a fixed length. But the boom pole ramp can actually be adjusted in length. And that's true when it's a ramp or as the boom pole, you can adjust it. Both ramps can be pinned in place with the same pins that hold them in their regular position. The winch itself has 2 gearings. So there's one gearing that's gives you more mechanical advantage than the other, but the downside is you have to spin the winch more to move the cable. So I'm going to put this up on the part of the winch that moves the cable quicker. You need to unwind quite a bit of rope to haul these logs up. So I'm going to go from the winch to the log, to the top of the log, over the top of the log, back to the trailer, and then I'm going to hook this hook onto the trailer, and then that'll allow me to roll the log up the trailer. So then what you're supposed to do, I believe, is run this rope underneath the side panel on the opposite side, and then hook it on here. Getting logs into the bottom of the dump box is just an inconvenience because you can't really dump a long log out. So an easy workaround for that is putting blocking in. So I put a piece of blocking here at the front, a piece of blocking at the back. That way the logs will never drop into here. And so when I need to unload the logs, I can just drop a side panel and roll them off. I'm going to show you how to crank these up, and hopefully we'll get 3 logs on fairly quickly and get them down to the sawmill. I hope, as you can see in the video, like, I'm not working that hard to crank these up. I don't even have the winch in the higher mechanical advantage setting, so it's really moving pretty smoothly. And the big thing I wanted you to see is that I'm really not pulling the log up, it's more rolling the log up the ramps, which really helps with reducing the amount of work you need to do to get these logs onto your trailer. It's my load of logs, and these are sizable logs. I'm not sure, I don't have a measuring tape on me, but I'd say that's a foot. This is the biggest one, and at the butt, that's over a foot for sure. And they're spruce, so they're solid logs, and I really was able to get them onto the trailer quite easily. So this feature's really handy for what I do, which is sort of a hobby miller. Obviously, I'm not getting a big load of logs each time, but I'm able to pick away at things in the woods. In terms of logging, and that works quite well. So I'll put the sides back up, put the ramps in the back of the truck, and we'll take these down to the sawmill, and that's that job done. So first thing to do before dumping is just take this pin out, and all that's doing is holding the dump box in place. So for most of the time you're using the trailer, you keep this pin in so that the dump box stays attached to the frame. But for dumping, obviously you take this out so that the dump box can pivot. So we're going to crank the winch to dump the load. I'm going to put the winch cable on the lower gear ratio because I'm guessing this will be a fairly heavy load. So that's just a 19mm socket. Tighten that up. So that'll give me a better mechanical advantage. So we may have put a little more on this load than the trailer's able to dump, so we're just going to shovel a little bit off. So we put on a rounded load. We just flattened off the top, which is probably a more reasonable load size to put on the Multilander, and we'll see if this man will dump. So unfortunately it's rained a lot and this topsoil is kind of muddy and sticking to the trailer. Normally, in all honesty, this would just dump, but what I'm going to do is just like rock the load a little bit. Hopefully it'll let go and come out of the trailer. So my last job of the day is to just go collect some firewood. And what I've been doing in the evenings when it's a bit cooler is taking my truck and the Multilander and a chainsaw and going into the woods and cutting down a hardwood or two and junking it up and loading the Multilander trailer with the firewood and then taking the firewood down to the cabin. And this is a really perfect use for me for this trailer. It's a reasonably sized trailer, not too big, not too small. I can get it into the woods and maneuver it around pretty well. Load up a decent sized load of wood and take it to the cabin. The other feature that I haven't mentioned yet in the video is this walking beam suspension that the trailer has. So if you've never heard of this walking beam suspension, basically what it is, the trailer has two tires on the left side, two tires on the right side, and they're fairly rugged ATV style tires. But the nice part about this walking beam suspension is that the right-hand tires and the left-hand tires operate independently of each other. So the right-hand tires can pivot separate from the left-hand tires. And so, for example, if you're going down a rough woods road and there's a dip in the road, or you're going through a ditch or over roots, the tires can pivot independently of each other, which keeps your load level and you're less likely to spill a load. And ultimately that just makes for a much more smooth driving experience with this trailer in the woods. And certainly it's a huge improvement over the previous trailer I'd been using.